Hello everyone, my name is Loko and welcome to some more StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void beta. Today I'm gonna show you a game where I tried playing with Lurkers. Now Lurkers are an extremely potent unit, their damage is absolutely insane, but getting them out and actually getting them into the battle seems to be the most problematic thing where you are trying them out. I've played a couple games with them before, but this is like the first time where I actually managed to get it to work. So spoiler alert, I will actually deal some damage with Lurkers in this game and I will be able to get them to work. But I just want to be going over the reasons why they are difficult to use and the ways you may be able to implement them in your own game. For those of you that have the beta. Now, as of right now, I saw a couple of questions on my previous video. As of right now, not very many people have access to the game, but if you're interested, you can go to the battle.net website, opt in to try the beta, and then cross your fingers and hope that it works out. But other than that, there's really no magical way I can help you out with that. So, I will let you know though. If I ever have any beta keys, I will obviously let you know. But anyways, so in this specific game, I'm gonna be giving the Lurkers a try. Now, Lurkers, in my opinion, feel a lot like the Heart of the Swarm host. Now, keep in mind, I'm not talking about the unit itself. The unit itself has completely different ways of playing, but the reason why I'm comparing the two is the fact that they are very similar in getting them out. So for example, in StarCraft 2 Heart of the Swarm, if you try and get to play Swarm Host, the worst thing you can do is try and get Zerglings out, go for a Lair, throw down an Infestation Pit and make some Swarm Host, because every single little bit of aggression that the Protoss will be able to throw at you will just sort of win him the game. And the same sort of feels to be, or seems to be true when playing Lurkers. Lurkers are extremely powerful, but to get them out, you need to be pretty late on into the game. So to give you an example right here, or exactly how the unit works, the first thing you need to get is a Hydra Den. Then you need to morph the Hydra Den into a Lurker Den, and then you can actually morph the Lurker or the Hydralisk into a Lurker, and then at Hive Tech you actually have an upgrade, I believe called Seismic Spines or something like that, that will actually increase the range of the Lurker to something a lot more usable. So more often than not, I found that the use of Lurkers is... It's alright until you actually get the ranged upgrade out. So, you know, to the point, in between, deciding that you want to get Lurkers, which I've done right now in the game, and actually getting to the point where you have the Lurkers out with this ranged upgrade, there's a whole bunch of times that you need, or a whole bunch of time in between where you need to be safe as well. So, more often than not, when you are trying to play Lurker, the worst thing you can do is actually rush them out. So what I'm gonna do instead is try and play, you know, a super safe style with Zerglings and maybe some Roaches and as well. But I believe I'll go mainly Zerglings and Hydralisk just to make sure that I'm safe. And then eventually I will transition to watch Lurkers as well. Now, in Heart of the Swarm, you really didn't have an easy way to transition to Hive other than Swarm Host, but right now it feels like Lurkers are sort of like an extra step in between that you can take as well. Since they are morphing in from a Hydralisk, and since you are getting the Hive anyway to get that ranged upgrade going, the Lurkers feels like a perfect unit in between, for example, getting Hydralisk and then getting Ultralisk in a late game, or in between getting Roaches and then, you know, Ravagers, and then switching to watch Swarm, or to watch Brute Lords in the later part of the game. The Lurker is sort of the perfect in-between unit that allows you to stay safe, defend your bases, and if you get lucky, maybe even finish off your opponent if he forgets detection. So how does the Lurker exactly work? The Lurker has by default pretty short range. When you upgrade the range, it's still not the longest range in the game, but it's a burrowed unit that does damage in a line forward. Now, obviously, since we are going to be getting a bunch of them, there's different lines going toward the main target. And what happens is that you sort of have these crossing lines everywhere that promote really strong play. Now I'll go over it exactly why in a second, but you can see the Adept, by the way, over here. The Adept is one of these units that get added as well. It has this teleportation ability that when it times out, it actually deals a bunch of damage, or it actually teleports towards the target or towards the shade that you could see go right there. You end up killing about 3 workers, since Adept do actually 2-shot workers right there. But anyway, so the Lurker, while at the very first sight, when you first think about it, it seems very similar like the Swarm Host. But one major difference to the Swarm Host is that the damage of it is pretty insane. But on top of that, they constantly attack, and they actually promote players that are better at positioning them. So, whereas with Swarm Host, you're actually promoted for, sitting back, and I'm talking, Heart of the Swarm Host, you're promoted for sitting back and sort of, zoning out your opponent. Lurkers really do require you to get up close and personal to the actual army, burrowing them and then trying to do as much damage as possible. Now, since they actually do have to be burrowed in order to attack, you need to make sure you get to the point where you're actually allowed to do that. Now, right here, by the way, I see that my opponent is going for a third base. I've been playing super safe up to this point, just getting my third base, getting some workers going. But right now, I see my opponent has gone for, you know, at least like to try to transition towards the third base. And that's massive. Now, I'm gonna try and attempt a bunch of Zerglings run by right here into the main base, see if I can get it some damage done. But knowing right now, by the way, he force fields really beautifully right here. But knowing that my opponent is going for a third base right now, basically flips the switch for me. I'm like, alright. Right now, I know for a fact that I am safe to start teching up because my opponent is not planning to move out for a little while longer. So I'm starting up my infestation pit near instantly. I am still going for the grooved spines upgrade right here, or the muscular augment upgrade rather, for the Hydralisk, which by the way, right now includes both muscular augments as well as grooved spines from Heart of the Swarm. So from one upgrade right now for the Hydralisk, you get both the range as well as the speed upgrade, which by the way is massive. And I am also going to start transitioning to a Hive. Now, notice, once again, I am not rushing out the Lurkers, because rushing them out is probably the worst thing I can do right now. I'm just going to make a bunch of workers for my third base, transition slowly towards a Hive right now as well. Get some extra upgrades going, but I'm still making sure that I have a reasonable Hydra Zergling force out to deal with any kind of potential aggression that my opponent can be throwing at me right now. So right now you can see, alright, I'm starting to produce a bunch of Hydras. I'm starting to double upgrade as well for these Hydras, and I'm starting up a bunch of Zerglings as well. Hive is on the way right now. Very shortly I will be able to start up the Lurker Den from this Hydralisk Den as well, and at that point I can finally start making the Lurkers. Now Lurkers, once again, they need to be pretty much right in the face of your opponent, or you gotta get lucky that your opponent forgets detection. Now, as it stands right now, most of the players in Legacy of the Void, most of the Protoss players, by the way, there you can see the Lurker Den go down, but most of the Protoss players are sort of like skipping out on most detection because they're scouting with like hallucinated phoenixes or hallucinated stalkers, as you can see right here, which I, by the way, thought were real stalkers. But they're scouting with that, and they're sort of like getting like a lot of disruptors out, which is exactly what my opponent is doing. So in this specific game, my opponent does not get any detection out, which is why the Lurkers turned out to do so much damage. But still, with proper positioning, you can still do a bunch with them anyways. Now, I am gonna get them out shortly, and I'm still spraying out a bunch of creep as well. I do want to go towards a fort base too. So, you know, and there we can see, by the way, that the Hydralisk, or the Hive just finished up, and I got a reasonable Hydralisk force as well, producing more and more of it. And we're gonna try and shoo away this army of my opponent. Now, the reason why I need to do that is because, once again, trying to get the Lurkers out, not rushing them out, and my opponent, yeah, he just decides to teleport home right there. Make sure that he is gonna be safe versus this Zerg army. So right now, my Hive is done. My upgrade towards the Lurker Den is almost done as well, which means that very soon I will be able to start the Lurker ranged upgrade. So there we go. Exactly what is it called? I believe it's, yeah, Seismic Spines right there. And I'm gonna be able to morph in a bunch of these Lurkers right now. So as of right now, I got about 3 morphing in. The very most I think I would ever go for Lurkers is like maybe 8 to 10 or so. You definitely don't want to be getting too many either, because if your opponent like just blinks forward and like manages to deal damage to it, it's gonna be very powerful, and they're really quite costly. So in total, how much do they exactly cost? How much is a yeah, it's 50 gas, or 50 minerals and 100 gas, on top of the original cost of a Hydralisk. So they're 150, which is very expensive. Very expensive. But there we go. So I got about, yeah, in total I will have about 9 in this game. I am finishing upgrades. I am making sure I get that extra ranged upgrade for the Lurkers as well. And very soon I will be able to start moving across the map with them. Now my opponent is starting to do a little bit of aggression right now with a bunch of gateway units. Obviously he's going to try and snipe down an army or snipe down a base. But here we go. My opponent is going to start moving forward, and I got a bunch of Lurkers. Now I will take control of the camera right now. In the meantime, I'm microing this right here. That fight that is going on. But right now the ranged upgrade isn't done yet, but you will already be able to start seeing the amount of damage that they can do, okay? So right now my opponent is moving up this ramp, bunch of disruptors that can deal damage, but here we go. Here's the damage of the Ravages turning in. Now he does not have vision yet, so he doesn't actually know where they are located, but the army is starting to take a pretty ridiculous amount of damage right now, just from these couple of Lurkers. Now right there, it wasn't the best example. Very shortly you will see a little bit more. But you can notice already that they are very good at like sort of like defending a position. So if my opponent decided to move like 2 steps up that ramp, he would have been completely decimated by that army. So he was forced to go back home, and this allows me to go at them with aggression. Now, you do need to make sure that you are playing Lurkers on a separate hotkey, okay? You really cannot have them on the same hotkey at all, because things will just go terrible. You need to use the Lurkers to select, sort of either like guide your opponent's army into the Lurker range, or to sort of like make sure that the Lurkers are zoning out so they can start engaging your main army. It's kind of an interesting little situation. So here we go. My opponent is starting to move forward right now. I am defending in the meantime behind my main base. But I'm once again going to show the vision right here of what exactly happens. So Lurkers are starting to deal damage. My opponent does not have detection. He's on move command for 2 seconds. And the entire army just decimates. Absolutely decimated by a bunch of these Lurkers. Lurker damage, once you actually get them to fight, is absolutely insane. Like, they deal a lot of damage, they're extremely powerful, but once again, getting up there is sort of like the most difficult bit. So once again, just burrowing them forward, trying to zone up my opponent's army, reinforcing with more and more Hydras as well, potentially gonna morph them into Lurkers if it turns out to be necessary. But there we go, my opponent is dealing more damage. Once again, gonna lurk, or like burrow them right here at the front, make sure they're spread out as much as possible. Lurkers can start dealing damage, and all of a sudden, the Protoss army is gone. So hopefully this gives you a good introduction to how Lurkers seem to be playing out in most of the games of StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. If you want to see more, hit that subscribe button as well, so you will be the very first one to get a notification when I upload another video. I want to thank you guys all for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, and I'll see you in the next one.